Let's introduce ourselves first. My name is Jez Anderson, I work for Kineo.
My name is Catrina Hewitson and I work for the Oxford Group.
And during the next half an hour we're just going to talk through a little bit about the digital landscape that we're operating in at the moment from a learning perspective, what that looks like, what that feels like, the implications that's having on us all in our professional lives. And then we're also going to look a little bit at leadership and what the implications for leadership are in terms of being leaders yourselves, supporting and working with leaders in your organisations. So hopefully we'll provide you some useful insight, some pause for thought in this crazy environment that we're in. At the end of it, if you've got any questions, please feel free to pitch them all. So, technology's around us. It's part of how we live. We all know that. It's a bit of a no-brainer these days. You know, I was sat on the train this morning, I looked down the carriage. As usual in London, no one interacting, of course, that's normal, but everyone was sat on their phones. You know, everyone was there looking at whatever they were looking at, streams and channels of knowledge and information just pumping straight through to people's point of reference. It's how we live, it's part of our everyday lives. And over time, we've seen that shift more and more. So, technology has driven change. We've had to respond, we've had to work around it. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, in essence, the moment we started to harness and use technology to improve our work, that has driven our behaviours. We have had to adapt, we've had to change, we've had to move in relation to that. The reality of it is that in the last 20 years or so, that's accelerated. I think back to when I was at school, the BBC computers. Who remembers the BBC computers? A few nods, yeah? Sitting in a room with lots of other people doing ones and zeros and wondering what the hell was going on. Now that's part of our lives. You know, how many have got kids that do coding as part of the curriculum? It's part of everyday life. And in the future, that's going to become more and more prevalent, to the point where we don't really think about it. And digital technology, we don't really think about it being part of anything that we own or control. It's just there. It's just part of our fabric. It's part of our society's fabric in terms of how we operate, and how we learn, and how we work. We've got to look at how do we harness that, how do we use that. Who is in the driving seat? Does technology drive us, or do we drive technology? Show of hands. Does technology drive us? Show of hands. Or do we drive technology? Oh, there's a lot of uncertainties. Maybe I'll ask the question at the end of this and you can make your minds up. My view on it is that we might have driven technology up to a point, but I think now technology drives us. I think that we are part of that machine almost, that it's creating technology. Yes, we create it for our own benefits, we create it for what we want it to, but it's ever increasing, it's faster and faster. And especially as we start to move towards AI, machine learning, and we look at different ways in which technology is starting to help and aid us do what we do, increasingly that technology starts to drive the behaviours and we have to demonstrate. And I think in a learning context, even more so. How many people here are active practitioners working with learners sort of day in, day out? What changes have you seen? Have you seen people, if you're working with a group session, have they got their phones out? Do you allow them to have their phones out? Mixture. So, Catrina and I were chatting about this before. We were saying, actually, how often now do you work with a group of learners where they've got their pad or their phone in front of them and they're not chatting to the mates or doing the shopping, they're looking and they're digging deeper into what's been spoken about. They're using you as a catalyst, but then backing that up with the technology to support you. And that's a massive shift. It's an enormous shift in 5 years, that change in behaviour. So it's not necessarily that we've designed that, that's just happened. There's an example for me of where the technology itself drives the behaviours and we see it day in, day out. So our goal is to think about this from a learning point of view. To think about how do you own and learn how do you support and use technology to the best, to support your learners, to support your organisations in what they're doing. And there's lots of changes and there's lots of things happening, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware of where they are and what that means and what that looks like. So part of what this is about is just giving you a bit of a taste of where things are going, And then we'll move on to, well, what are you going to have to do about that? How are you going to have to be as a leader within your organisations to make that happen and to make the most of that? So, nice little diagram, I like this one. Rate of change, anyone seen this before? It's quite an interesting one. I mean, there's lots of different versions of this out there, but it sort of talks about the speed of change and technology and where we are in relation to that speed of change now. That we're behind the curve. And if you look at the projection of that graph, we will always be behind the curve. So if you agree with that, and you agree with that perspective, if we try to manage technology, if we try to own technology and control it, we'll never succeed. It might be that we actually have to shift our mindset about how we use technology to support us. And it's about harnessing it, and it's about recognising what benefits and what it can do for you as an organisation, as an individual within that, or how your behaviours might need to change to support and deliver that. So for me, it's about looking at how is your organisation digitally enabled. It's not looking at it from I do digital learning, we have an LMS, we have a platform, we do all this. It's actually, are you thinking in a digitally enabled way about your learning processes? So it's forgetting it as a tool, it's forgetting it as a process, it's thinking about digital as being part of how we behave. Like the learner example, looking at the phone. It's about, actually our society has changed around technology, and has our practice changed along with it? And what do you need to do that? So there's the technology side of that, and what you could be doing around that, but there's also the personal side of it. Anyone come across a guy called Josh Bursey? So Josh is one of those great commentators from a digital technology perspective, talks an awful lot about the changing nature of learning, the changing nature of how technology is supporting and influencing that. And this is a really interesting graph, and I'm not going to talk through it. There's photographs there, and I'm sure you can probably download this if you need it. Alternatively, there is a link in the bottom to the original piece where it comes from. For me, it's the end bit. It's the bit where Josh says that we are now, or about to enter, which is taking away structure. And what Josh implies by this is that the structure of learning is starting to erode, as I see it. Formal curriculum, unless they're mandatory, are starting to disappear. And that learning in the flow of work is becoming much more prevalent, and that's what people want. Micro-learning, all that sort of thing. But importantly, it's about how do we support and curate that knowledge? How do we enable people to get what they need when they need it? And how do we trust people to be able to do what they need to do when they need to do it? So it's not any longer about how do we own the training, but it's about how do we support and enable that. Which, are characteristics and behaviours that many professionals that we've always wanted to live to. But the reality, technology is sort of pushing us towards that more and more, increasingly towards that place where we have to trust and support our learners to learn for themselves in the flow of work, as and when they need it. We, at Kineo, we created this bit of a model to talk about social learning and to think about as a perspective on how organisations look at learning. But we can equate this to general learning in terms of, at one end of it, you've got high control. You've got organisations where they control the curriculum, they control the content, they control the process and the timing of learning. The learner has very little power in that. To the other end of the spectrum, where the learner has the control, and all an organisation does is enable and support that. Now, we don't say that everyone needs to be on that far right-hand side of the slide, but it's about making some choices and decisions about where your organisation's culture is, where the culture of your learners are, how can you support them appropriately through different styles, different approaches, different uses of technology to support that. And ultimately, when we think about being digitally enabled, it's about saying, well, what do we need it to be? If we're doing compliance training and we need to make sure people are doing fire safety, then of course we're going to be fairly controlled about that. But if ultimately you're talking about personal development and personal growth, then maybe it's about actually providing the right environment for people to own and take control of their own learning. And how can technology support us doing that? But importantly, how can your behaviours as a professional help you do that? And this is where it comes to ecosystems. And ecosystems are become a bit of a buzzword. I'm sure everyone's been floating around the learning ecosystem. what we're talking about when we think about ecosystems, it's about how do you use technology in a flexible way? How do you use the different types of technologies that are out there to support you flexibly and with adaptability, that are modular in nature, so it's bite-sized, it's chunks, it's not big programs, it's actually allowing you to break it down into points of need, it's easy to use. So you're looking at how does people actually engage with knowledge and information in your workplace and supporting them doing that. It's about delivering personalised experiences. So it's not about saying, here's a learning pathway, I'm going to be on it, and that's your personal journey. It's about saying, what's right for you? What do you need when you need it? And empowering individuals to make those choices. And what's right for your organisation, how do you structure that? And can technology help you do that? What technology options out there to help you do that? And allowing collaboration. Importantly, allowing and supporting people to learn from each other. That's one of the key things around social, looking at social learning, is actually it's not so much what goes in, but it's the process by which people explore what's there, and then what they bring into that. So anyone that's done any thinking and reading around communities of practice is very clearly aligned with how do you develop communities of practice within the workplace. And actually the social tools help you do that. So an example of this is what we call it, there's 3 layers to it. One is the experience layer. So the moment when somebody actually engages with the digital technology itself. But that's not a platform, it's not a course, it's actually the moment that they interact and decide that they're going to enter into a piece of learning. What does that look like? Firstly, it could be very web-based, there's lots of different options, but it's about doing it in a way which reflects your culture, their culture, and empowered learning. Beneath that's the content, beneath that's the stuff that you would put in, the curriculums, the courses, the traditional stuff maybe. How do you deliver that? And then underneath that, increasingly important is the data. And what do you do with that data? So where does the data go? How do you manage the data? How do you learn from the data to inform what it is that you do up front? So it's about the different technologies that are available to deliver that. Here's a range of different technologies. There's all sorts. If you want to talk to us, we can help and steer you towards that. It's a bit of a minefield for those people that are new to it. But rather than thinking around learning as being an LMS, I've got to go out there and buy a learner management system, it's about thinking about it as actually what's right for me in my organisation. Because I might not need an LMS. I might not need to put everything into one place. I can look at cloud-based technology and think, how do I use the cloud better? How do I support and enable people? What do you want and need from your learning processes? And then how can all these different range of tools support and help you do that? When we get to it, really, it's about change. It's about how do we as professionals and organisations respond and react to the changes that are happening around us. The social changes that are happening as a result of technology. How do we change our practice to reflect that? Bit of a, going back, Darwin quoted, it's not the strongest of the species, it's the one that's most adaptable to change. So how do we adapt? And are you adapting? Or will you be like the dinosaur that doesn't live, doesn't survive? And in some ways, that's not about our choice. That's technology driving that, social behaviour, social change is driving that. To close, before I hand over to Catrina, who's going to, I've scared you a little bit, maybe. I'm going to give it to Catrina and she's going to give you all the answers. So it's a bit of bad cop, good cop this afternoon. Bursin talks about technology and markets. So it's not about the actual technology itself that's important, but it's the way we think about using that technology that's important. So I challenge you, and this is a challenge from somebody who's worked in L&D for a long, long time. It's a challenge to think about your own practice and how you do and how you support learning, how you learn yourself, and to think how can I be more digitally and technologically enabled as an individual, and therefore what can I do that's different. And on that basis and on that theme, I'm going to hand over to Catrina, who's going to talk very nicely now about leadership and transformation, digital transformation. Thank you.
Thanks, Jez. So we were very keen when we began to really think about this seriously that we didn't become overwhelmed by the technology, but that we kept the human very much at the centre of things. So we thought about what is this in terms of not just numbers and data, but what is it in terms of human interaction, what is it in terms of emotion, what is it in terms of how learners are feeling, what is it in terms of how we as L&D professionals are feeling and responding to the challenges ahead. We know that there is this pressure, in a sense, to be the most adaptable, to work with what we've got. We also know that that can be a very, very overwhelming feeling. So we wanted to conduct some research and find out more about where people were and how they were feeling. So we discovered that actually there was an awful lot of people feeling unprepared. There were an awful lot of people feeling unskilled. So not just feeling as if they weren't ready, but feeling as if they didn't have the skills that they needed for this broad sense of the digital age. And that they felt unsafe as a result of this and a whole range of things. So what we're seeing, interestingly, among the kind of communities that we're working with, and that would be from senior leaders to your newest learners, is a sense that things feel less safe. So that's an interesting emotional environment in which to try and drive change and transformation. And interestingly, as we sometimes do when we're not safe, we think that the people who should be sorting all of this out are over there. Not us, but over there. So there's a sense that leaders should be doing something about this. Leaders should be having technical strategies, should be developing the skills, and should be helping people feel, I guess, more psychologically safe. There's a strong desire. Over 3/4 of the people that we surveyed who really thought that this was something that employers should have a sense of urgency about. But it's not all difficult and it's not all scary. We also found that people were excited about the benefits. So thinking about the different elements that transformation might bring, there is a level of excitement there. Plus there's a huge amount to be gained if we get those skills right. So a sense that if leaders are able to work on this agenda, if leaders are able to move forward, we know we can't catch up, but if people are able to move forward, then that's powerful. So one of our big questions became, in terms of what we wanted to look at around learning, was around self-awareness. How are we all doing as individuals with our relationship with technology? So rather than using one of the former or existing self-appraisal tools, we decided we'd create a quiz. And we thought it might be useful for you guys to be one of our early testers of the quiz. So hopefully everybody has got a 1, a 2 and a 3 close by to you. I'm going to run you through 5 questions. There's an answer option 1, 2, 3 already on the screen. Will you just hold up for each question the one that applies mostly to you? I'm going to go through relatively quickly. So, question 1. We live in an increasingly digital world. How does that sit with you? 1, 2, or 3? Okay, oh look here, we've got lots of 1s, I can't see any 3s. Anybody? Okay, so mostly 1s and 2s. Keep hold of your own score, everybody. Hectic morning of meetings. You've misplaced your phone, but you urgently need to send the contact details to a colleague. What do you do? 1, 2, or 3? I'm impressed at the 1s because I wouldn't do that. More 2s in this occasion. Yeah, I think that was a lot of 2s. Okay, next one. Your place of work has introduced another new system you need to learn to use. How do you feel? 1, 2, 3. Yes, we are seeing a lot of positive attitude and relationship and resilience coming through. That's mostly 1s, I think. Okay, next one. Last but one question. A colleague walks in with a new fitness tracker and a small group gather around him to ooh and ah. In this scenario, where would you be? 1, 2, 3. Instant 1 over there. We've got a 3. A very honest 3 there. Another 3. So that's a mix. Maybe more 2s there, but we've got some... Oh no, we've got more 3s coming through. Okay, final question. AI asks 5G. Jazz was painting some of that picture. The world is changing at lightning speed, but how do you see your future in this digitally transformed world? 1, 2, or 3? at least one person who's read 1984. Okay, so work that out for yourself. Did you find yourself holding up more ones, more twos, more threes? We saw hardly any threes there, so we have some people already adapting pretty rapidly in the audience. If you were mostly ones, you're a digital devotee. So you're somebody who is keeping ahead, proud of keeping ahead, looking at the possibilities. If you're two, you're a digital survivor. Maybe you really feel the reality of that graph that Jez showed us, where you feel like you're just about surfing, just about keeping your head above parapet, but there's always someone who's ahead and there's always a concern about what the next thing is. If you're three, and I think we had very few regular threes, you could be a digital dodger. In other words, you could just be pretty resistant to everything that's happening. One of the things that we're going to ask people to do, and that quiz is going to form part of, we're developing a new module at the moment around leading in a digital age, and that quiz will be one of the first self-evaluation tools that we ask people to use before they come to the module. Because this for us is sitting at the heart of what we do, which is to help leaders and to help those who are leading them, first of all, start spending some time thinking about their own relationship with technology, and therefore how they lead in a digital age. I think sometimes we're not always self-aware, maybe we're just not always honest about where we are, where we might be, whether we're excited, whether we're scared. So once we've looked at self-awareness, once we've begun to resolve that sense of where we might be, how else do we keep people at the heart of the learning process? We're finding that in terms of the kind of not just the content that we're developing, which I'll come on to in a moment, but actually the way that we are working, the way that we're developing learning is becoming very different. So Jez touched on this. We are finding that people, learners, and our partners in L&D are much closer to the heart of the process than they used to be. So I guess in a sense, we probably have a sense of ourselves as experts with access to all kinds of information who could curate and create wonderful programs for people to come on. We're bringing people in before that now. So we're looking at 4 different stages. One is we're looking at much higher levels of customizing. How do we, rather than giving people a set product, give them options within that product and enable them to find the things that are most relevant for them? We're blending much, much more. So it's very rare now for us to have a product that is entirely one thing, entirely online, or entirely face-to-face, or entirely social, or entirely individual. We're looking much more at blends, so making the most of technology, but also using the power of bringing people together, and often seeing how we can maximise those things if we put them together. We are prototyping work much more, and it'd be really interesting to know whether this is something that you guys are doing. So we are much more looking at taking something with quite rough edges, something that we feel has got potential, maybe as a learning product or a new module, or a program or an experience for people to have, and taking it to them before they're ready. So on Monday I spent time with 4 of our clients, and something that I would never normally have shown a group of clients because it didn't feel ready, it didn't feel well thought through, it felt rough around the edges, and actually sitting down and sharing it with them, and there's a real mix of emotion that I felt about that. One was I felt personally exposed because it wasn't perfect. The second thing was you're exposed again because you have to hear some pretty honest and potentially brutal feedback about your work and your thinking. But the third thing is it's incredibly exciting to do once you're at the other end because you just have fantastic insight in terms of how to make it better. So that's becoming much more central to our design process. And we are doing much, much more interaction with learners as social groups so that we come away from being the experts and we become perhaps much more curators or facilitators or catalysts of great conversations that people are able to have. So that's the way in which we're beginning to respond to keeping people at the centre of the very digital age. And I guess just a final point, what's the kind of agenda that we think is important? So at Oxford we're working with managers and we're working with leaders. I think the direction that we think we're heading in, and Jez again touched on this, is that in terms of the leadership agenda, we probably want to focus on 4 things. The first thing is giving people time to understand the context, to really sit back for a little while and take a long view or take a balcony view on everything that's going on for their organisation, for their competitors, for their customers, for their employees. And we know that people struggle to have the time to do that the tyranny of the urgent and the tyranny of the moment can prevent people from really spending the time to dig in, pause, understand their context. So we're really thinking that that is a critical part of our leadership work. We think mindset and identity is really important. So leaders are having to rethink the notions of leadership, our concepts of leadership. We're away from command and control, far, far away from command and control. Very much into the idea of leaders who draw ideas from their teams, who work with their teams, who don't know all the answers, who aren't the expert, who do feel confident to ask lots and lots of questions and stay really curious. So things like the quiz are just a small example of how we're working with mindset and identity and helping people to work out what that looks like for themselves and at an organisational level. We also think that innovation and learning are critical, and by that what I guess we don't mean is that leaders suddenly have to invent the iPhone, but we do think that leaders need to do what we call ambidextrous work, so they're able to run their business as usual agenda, but they're also able to think about what's next, how do we stay relevant, how do we get this better. So innovation, or learning if you like, is integral to the way that they're running their teams and running their areas of responsibility, not something that you do just on an away day with a flip chart surrounded by post-its. And then finally, we sense that at a point where all the data is telling us that psychological safety is hugely important to employees, as the research suggested, we think the way in which leaders are connecting, engaging and communicating with teams who may no longer be in the same room, who may be around the world, who may be around the country, who may be trying to join a meeting sitting in a very windy, cold Costa coffee, how do you make sure that you are continuing to engage and to connect with those people? I think that's what we probably think the agenda looks like, and as I say, we're developing our solutions in a very different way. So that everyone, that's what we wanted to share with you. A couple of things to say. If you'd like a copy of the research that I quoted from, let me just get Paul and Teresa to wave to you. If you scan your badge with either of those people, they'll be able to send you a full copy of the research. It's really fascinating stuff. Kineo and the Oxford Group are part of City and Guilds. We're on stand F20. Please come and have conversations with us if you'd like to. Thanks ever so much.